Hello and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe Podcast. Today we're talking about Kenobi Part 3 with myself, Ashley Coffin, and Paul Hoppe. All that and more after a commercial break we have no control over.
This is your daily reminder that no matter how you feel about an actor's performance or how many Grand Inquisitors they kill, the excuses for sending them racist, misogynist, or otherwise hateful messages is the null set. For those of you who don't speak math, that means there are 0. Now take me back to my bacta tank.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Matthew Fox. They, them pronouns.
I'm Ashley Coffin.
I'm Paul Hoppe.
Awesome. It's so good to have you both on. We're talking about episode 3 of Kenobi, but in some ways, actually, we're going to go back just a little bit because Ashley is going to be on for all the rest of our episodes. Ashley has decided to do every social event and every family event and every concert possible in the Philadelphia area over the last couple weeks.
It's been crazy.
Ashley had to go see a gay cowboy and then see Nine Inch Nails and thought that they, I think canceling those things to be on the podcast with us would have been more important. Ashley had, I would have gone see Trent Reznor too, or the gay cowboy. They're both awesome. Peck, right? Peck is the name? Orville Peck, thank you.
The best.
But let's kind of just start by backing up a bit. And Ashley, what did you think of the first 2 episodes?
I really liked it. I'm really on board. I love that we're getting like this little pocket of story that everybody always talked about, because like, why wouldn't Vader be going after Obi-Wan Kenobi during all that? Like the whole, like, oh, they never saw each other again until that moment. I'm like, but why? Like, it doesn't make any sense, but I didn't dwell on it.
Yeah.
But now we have this like little pocket story that, like, even if it doesn't all make sense, I don't care. I'm really enjoying it.
Nice. In some ways, that's kind of a refreshing attitude, I think, in a lot of ways. And I'm glad we have that, because certainly the internet is full of a lot of garbage takes of, this is more the racism stuff.
Oh my
Zingram's
God.
getting to, and we'll get into that. But I admit that I try hard to be that place of, like, it doesn't all have to fit. There's one thing in this 3rd episode today that had me just like,
Oh no.
But which we'll get to. But I think you're right. I think being able to see this as just kind of a fun story that fills in some of the character stuff it's been good. And I certainly really enjoyed the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. In terms of like continuity, I mean, I already talked about the first 2 episodes. You can go back and listen to that. But in terms of continuity, it doesn't really particularly bother me. I don't feel like Star Wars has ever been super conscientious when it comes to continuity and things being totally logical. And I'm kind of just okay with that. Like, unless something like really, in my view, kind of trashes a character or takes a character and does something I'm like, that's not what I feel like that character would do. That always bothers me in any piece of fiction. And we don't have to get into the specific instance where that happened. But, here I'm like, I feel like Kenobi and Obi-Wan could have had some interaction before,
Right.
But we don't know, and now we know. But at the same time, also my view of canon is like, whatever. Like, if you don't like that there's some particular interaction here that happened, it doesn't have to have happened for you, unless then this spins off into something else, and then you're like, all right, now I'm trapped in this, cascading content.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and let me talk about, because let's
you want to just get into that?
Diving right into that. Yeah, I thought we were going to talk some other stuff first, but we can go there right now, because there was something that happened in this episode that did bother me because of how it doesn't fit continuity. And I spent a lot of the afternoon thinking about it and thinking about how I wanted to talk about it, because I do think that people can get way too wrapped up in this. And I think to some extent, I think the best answer to not having breaks in continuity is to never do prequels. And frankly, I kind of wish everyone would just do that, because I think, a sequel is fine because you're exploring new territory. With a prequel, you always have the problem that where things are supposed to end up. And, we've all talked at length about how the understanding of the past that we had from the original trilogy doesn't really line up with the prequels. And to some extent, like, we've all had 20 years to get over that, but Paul and I also still joke about, like, this doesn't really make sense, but fair enough. For me, because I realized why I think I can figure out how to talk about the thing that bothered me, and I promise I'll explain it in a second, and not just monologue, although this will be a little bit of a monologue. I want to monologue longer about how this will or won't be a monologue, but that's not helping. Moving on. For me, the thing that I probably care about most is when things happen that make later things feel wrong or feel irrelevant. And in the original movies, and granted, I watched them as a young kid, so I'll fully cop to being the person who, like, it imprinted on me when I was age 3 or 4. one of the most powerful scenes in A New Hope is when Darth Vader and Obi-Wan confront each other. And I remember, like, I had always had the sense that they had not seen each other since the battle on Mustafar. And as Paul, you were saying, like, we all talked about this a couple times in the episodes leading up to this. And at first I was like, I don't want to see, Vader versus Obi-Wan again. We see that in A New Hope. And enough people, I think, made good arguments of why it doesn't have to be that the last time they saw each other was 20 years ago. It can be 10 years ago, and all the stuff about a different way to see it and things like that. And I was like, okay, I'm on board with that. I'm ready to see them get along together. But for me, one of the essential things in that moment, one of the things that makes it so powerful, is that Vader says, the circle is now complete. When we last met, I was but the student. Now I am the master. And then later says, your powers have grown weak, old man. And so to me, part of what I got out of this is that whenever the last time they met, Kenobi was still more powerful. Kenobi was still the teacher, and Vader was still on some level the learner, the student. And he hadn't yet become a weak old man. And so watching this episode where Vader basically kicks Kenobi's ass and almost kills him, and whether he doesn't kill him because he just wants to torture him with fire first, which we'll talk about this happened in Part 3, Episode 3, so that was kind of cool, or he just thinks he can't kill him, which maybe, Paul's what you're talking about, not making sense. But either way, it felt really wrong to me. And what I kept thinking about it more was, okay, but why does this bother me? Does it have to bother me? And I think at the end of the day, the fact that it's a break in canon isn't the problem for me, because, like, Leia and Obi-Wan having this much time together also kind of makes some parts of A New Hope not make sense. But who cares? Like, that's one that I'm able to be more like, it's not as big a deal. For me, I think the thing is, I feel like the story of what is Kenobi doing on Tatooine during these 20 years, there's so much depth and possibility in that story. And saying instead, no, we're going to have a Kenobi story, but we're going to have Kenobi fight Vader again. And then do it in a way that doesn't actually, it didn't feel like they really thought about how to make it all fit. They just said, you know what? Hayden and Ewan on a screen together is great. Let's put them there. Let's have a fight. Let's not care about much. And that, to me, that just feels like lazy writing. I think to me, that's why it bothered me at the end of the day. It was like, if you're breaking the continuity to tell a new, different, interesting kind of story, great. If you're doing it just to have the two of them fight, that's where it lost me. So monologue rant over. I'll pass it on to you two to see what you thought.
So I saw them giving us that fight in the middle as that's not the only fight we're going to see. And right now, Obi-Wan is weak. And by the end of it, he's going to kick Vader's ass and get away. Like, there's no way that we're not going to get Obi-Wan back at his, 100% Jedi. And then that's when it's only been 10 years since Anakin's kind of been a Sith or whatever. And I would still consider that in like the student kind of thing. Like, he's coming in there like, look at what I can do. I'm killing all these people. But Obi-Wan is he can't use the Force right now. So I don't know. I just feel like we're gonna get that reversal. I think.
I agree. I think that's a likely way that this is going to head. I also think that there's some nuance to what Vader said in A New Hope. Riki actually put the exact quote in the chat. I have it written down from the clip that you sent. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. Like, when I left you, I don't think that's talking about here. I don't think that's the last time we met, right? I don't think he's saying the last time we met. I think he's saying when I left you, when I left the Jedi Order to become a Sith, basically. I was an apprentice. Now I'm a master. And, and I get you on, like, the years have made you weak. And, to me, it's like, victory has defeated you. It's like very Bane. Another mass villain, sure. But
he's
like,
also a lot older.
Right. And, and time has passed, right? But like, here, I guess defeat has defeated you. But, I do think Obi-Wan probably is going to recover some of his power, right?
I fully agree with that, yeah.
But yeah, it's just, to me, it's not a break in canon, because I don't think, like, I think when I left you is clearly referring to 20 years before, and this is the midpoint, basically, right? And this is kind of, I would imagine this is going to end up being sort of a standoff, because it almost like kind of has to be. Like, obviously he's not going to like totally defeat Vader.
Right.
Because
that
Vader
can't happen.
That doesn't make any sense.
We all know what's gonna
right?
happen.
And obviously Vader can't kill Kenobi because Obi-Wan is in A New Hope. He's clearly a little different in A New Hope than he is here at the beginning of this, right? Like, this is kind of maybe the turning point where he's like, you know, he still decides to basically hide and wait until Luke's, you know, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do some Force stuff. And the stuff with Leia, I feel like them knowing each other is important and actually fills a bit of a gap of like, why did she send that to him? You know, why did she send the plans to him? But
in Rogue One, Bail, like, I think it's actually Mon Mothma says to Bail Organa, we need to get Obi-Wan. You need to talk to your friend, meaning Obi-Wan.
Right.
And Bail says, I will ask Leia. So it's not Leia who decides to talk to Obi-Wan. It's Bail, her father.
Yeah, but I don't know, the way she says, Obi-Wan Kenobi, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. Like, I don't think you say that to someone who you've never met and you're like, help me, person I've never heard of. I'm sending these plans to you in a droid. Like,
this is very important thing.
Yeah, it feels like there was something personal there, although then they don't really talk about that after Obi-Wan dies, right? Like, but that's the thing. That's kind of...
she's not affected the slightest.
Right, but like, Luke's affected for like 5 minutes. Right. You know, it's not that kind of movie, kid. You know, like, it's I mean, like...
her whole planet, including her parents, got destroyed, and she does nothing. So yeah.
Right, exactly. and, you know, it's Obi-Wan, it's that, you know, the master has to die so the student can go on, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I just think it's... it doesn't fit perfectly, but like, if you go back and you look at the lightsaber duel, like, that doesn't fit perfectly. Like, that's not, you know, Vader doesn't look as badass as like he does now, because they just were like, okay, so here, you go here, and you know, you swing this broomstick.
The 70s.
I get all that, and I definitely did think, I mean, I didn't for a moment think that we weren't going to end with Kenobi in some way winning the end fight, or at least getting away in some way. Like, so I'm totally with you on those things. And I think I hear you about the idea that this could be the midpoint. It's just, it's to me, it's like, as the writer, you don't have to play those kind of words. Like, to me, it feels like playing word. It feels like saying, I want to have these two characters fight again, so let's play these word games to make it fit what was already said. And I guess that's what, to me, like, and maybe it's in part because I've read the Kenobi novel about him staying on Tatooine. And it's not that it has to be that way, but it just feels like so much of the story, it just feels fairly by rote, or what's the word? There's a word that's like trope. What the hell am I thinking of? Trite. Thank you. Okay. It just felt like, and I think I kind of had the feeling about this episode a bunch, like the fact that like we had two different times where they almost get caught. Like, let the guy just be nice to them, and then later have someone who like rats them out. To have a lot of this episode just felt very lazy to me, I guess, and I just that's to me why that scene bothered me. But if it's I'm glad, I was very curious how other people would feel about it. So if it doesn't bother you, that's that's really cool.
Did you notice that was Seth Rogen?
Oh, was it? That's awesome.
Yeah, the voice of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He kind of looks like Seth Rogen, but yeah, I hear you. That part doesn't feel like lazy writing to me. There's a part we'll get to at the end of the episode that I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. That, you know, feels like that to me, or just like nonsensical writing. I didn't need a Vader versus Obi-Wan showdown, like prequel. Some people did, right? You know, it looked really cool. I guess, like, I don't know, go ahead of time, I wasn't like that, like, oh, great, they're doing a Kenobi series. I was like, okay, they're doing another series, and you know. But like, yeah, I can see if you have sort of some other stories that take place in this time that you would like to see, that seeing this story instead would be very disappointing. I get that, you know, for sure.
Yeah, and it's not even that I wanted the story in the book. It just felt like this is so close to the prequel stories that I felt like you really had a chance to give us something very different. But
Right.
that's my one thing. What else did y'all like about this episode, or not like about the episode?
Yeah, I thought we were on the ranting part.
Oh, and if you want, let's stay on the ranting part. Paul, talk about the ending, because you seem to have some thoughts about that.
Okay, so
Let me interrupt you for a second. I just want to thank Riki. Riki put the whole quote from Leia in there, and I'll read it. General Kenobi, years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars. Now he begs you to help him in his struggle against the Empire. I regret that I am unable to present my father's request to you in person, but my ship has fallen under attack, and I'm afraid my mission to bring you to Alderaan has failed. I have placed information vital to the survival of the rebellion into the memory systems of this R2 unit. My father will know how to retrieve it. You must see this droid safely delivered to him.
yeah, so that I'm gonna give you that doesn't sound like somebody who knows somebody well, right?
Yeah.
Now it could be like, oh, you don't want other people to know that, I guess. Also, I don't think he served her father in the Clone Wars per se, right? Like, he was part of the Jedi Order, and Bail was part of the Senate, and the Jedi Order was it's complicated, and like that phrasing, it's they made prequels. And not everything fit in perfectly.
They could just pretend like she doesn't know that he's not Ben, and she only ever knows him as Ben.
Yeah, the Clark Kentness of it all. She knows Ben Kenobi.
Right.
She's never heard of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, but now she knows Obi-Wan.
Does she even know the last name? I mean, she wasn't listening when 10 people called him Obi-Wan, right?
Right.
I mean, Kenobi might just be the Smith or the Johnson of this universe,
Right. You don't know how many Kenobis there are in the galaxy.
Like Papadopoulos.
There you go.
So,
all right.
The thing I had a big issue with at the end was like the whole thing felt contrived in terms of, okay, they're gonna escape. They're all gonna go down the tunnel. Then Vader shows up, and Obi-Wan basically has like a force-sensitive panic attack. Cool, I like that. I'm here for that, Then he decides not to go down the tunnel, and the other two go down the tunnel. Then somehow he gets out of there while they're all out in front. I don't know how. Oh. And I forget what her name was, but the woman who's helping them goes back out
Valeria
the tunnel.
Sand.
Yeah, Game of Thrones.
She's Valeria Sand.
I'm not going to reference her by her Game of Thrones name. But the rebel, I'm going to call her the rebel because that's what she is. And she goes back and leaves Leia alone, which is just absolutely ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But she's going back, I guess, to help a Jedi because she thinks that's important and that's maybe what she really wants to do more than help this kid. Fine. She somehow gets out of the tunnel somewhere that then she finds Obi-Wan. Reva goes down the tunnel, doesn't run into her, and somehow is on the other side to catch Leia when she comes out. Yeah. What? Like
everyone who's evil moves really fast,
but not just apparently. like the geography, the geometry of it. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
She couldn't have. She had to have been like, "This is a tunnel; it must come out somewhere."
Right.
And went that
exactly.
way.
So she had to go around some other way, but like they don't show us any of that. They don't show us that the tunnel maybe branches. They would have to branch. So
I think what we're missing here, Paul, is that somewhere within that one tunnel is another secret tunnel.
Oh no. Tala. Yes, Tala. Thank you, Riki.
Yeah, that Tala's the name. Thank you.
Yes.
But I just want to give a shout out. Wikipedia is Riki Hayashi, who is my co-host often, along with his partner Sarah Hayashi, on the Star Wars Universe podcast. We did episode by episode coverage of the Clone Wars and Rebels. We'll be doing kind of Kenobi feedback episodes that'll go up on Monday nights, or probably go up on Tuesdays. And he's the one who has been putting up all these great quotes. So thank you so much for that, as well as helping us remember the names and things like that. Hence the Wikipedia, the encyclopedia for this podcast. So thank you very much. And he says that it's very Resident Evil map geography. Villain always gets ahead of you.
Right. Yeah. And, I'm just like... Look, I know this is how you wanted the story to go, but like I felt like the character actions didn't make that much sense, and then the geography of it didn't make that much sense. And I'm like, that's two things, And honestly, the beginning of the episode I really enjoyed a lot. I felt like there were a lot of really good moments. The acting. I know it's like you see this like these people like they're people complaining about this actor, and then other people like, oh, you can't complain about that actor. And it's like, can we like maybe like talk about performances without always having everything be like, well, I didn't like this person's performance, so they're horrible, and I'm going to be horrible to them, and racist and misogynist, or like, oh, well, you can't criticize anybody who at all, basically. And it's like, it's somewhere in between, I think,
Are you about to say something negative about Ewan McGregor?
No, actually, it's been pretty fantastic across the board. No, I mean, I think Leia in some of the first couple episodes.
I'm really ready for them to drop that little kid off. Let's get to the story. That was cute. It was fine. I'm getting a little tired of it.
Right. Yeah, I hear that. In this episode, I actually didn't have a lot of moments where this felt more like they kind of established, like, I don't know whether this was shot later or whatever, but like it just this felt more genuine, and the other ones, there were just a few more moments where it was like, and some of the Inquisitor stuff, like I'm not crazy about, it's not like I necessarily think it's bad, but it just feels something, and it's like I don't even want to say that, because I know a lot of people saying that are like not saying it in constructive feedback sort of ways, but it's like, but it's there. It's like, that's not my favorite part.
But I think like to some extent, I think that's why, not just this podcast, but I think there is a lot of good content out there that is doing the kind of middle ground you're talking about. Because I think one of the things that is the whole, to me, yes, there are a few people out there saying like, oh, if you don't like this character, you're terrible. I think though that's mostly the people who are defensive. They're saying, oh, you think that just because I don't like Reva that I'm racist, or just because I didn't like Rey that I'm sexist. And then going on to say pretty racist or sexist things in the reason they critique them. And that's, you and I have talked about that a lot, of like that, you don't like Last Jedi, but you also don't like a lot of the people who, when you say I don't like Last Jedi, I'll be like, oh yeah, you're right. How could they let that black character, and
yeah, I don't like what they're doing.
Right, exactly. And I think that's, I think we can model that here. We can be a place where we can say like, yeah, like I think the idea of being mad at a 10-year-old actor because you don't like the role that they're doing is horrible. And the idea that Jake Lloyd got bullied like that is terrible. I thought that the performance given by Jake Lloyd was painful to watch. I think that's probably due to the bad dialogue and the bad direction. And the fact that, like, yeah, I'm not going to blame a 10-year-old for not giving a good acting performance.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it was a painful acting performance, and I think we can name both of those things. And I think I really love this Princess Leia, although for me, I don't mind having her in the show, but it's for me, it's taking away from what I want to be seeing in terms of like, it's not giving Obi-Wan a chance to be alone.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which is another thing I think was a problem with this episode, is we kind of went to the Anakin thing too fast. But in this, but yeah, I think that's important that we can talk about these things. And like, to me, especially with Inquisitors, and I talked about this a little bit last time, but I'm curious, especially Ashley, your thoughts on this. I really like the tension among the Inquisitors, because I feel like it feels to me like what the dark side is supposed to feel like without the rule of two, that they're all ambitious and power hungry and backstabbing each other and fighting over control and stuff like that. And I don't know, I think Moses Ingram's doing a great acting job, but I get people can disagree on that and not be terrible. It's just that it's hard to talk about, Paul, and there I agree with you, because a lot of the people who disagree are being pretty horrible. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, you can have a problem with the casting, or you can have just like not love the performance, and it's like, I thought she was fantastic in The Queen's Gambit, and I'm happy to see more from her. I just, her and also Sung Kang, who's from like the Fast and the Furious series, and which I haven't actually seen. I've seen him in Better Luck Tomorrow, which was kind of an accidental prequel to various Fast and Furious movies. But it feels a little stiff to me, and but I don't know, that might be more dialogue and direction and whatever, and it's just kind of not
you
quite
guys
doing
know
it.
her like backstory, or is she a new character?
She's a new character. I think the backstory, I think, has been hinted at by the fact that there's a girl who looks an awful lot
pretty
like
explicit,
her.
I think. Yeah.
Okay, so I was just gonna say that's definitely what I got from it, that she was one of the little Jedi kids.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And my theory is that Anakin actually, like, something happened that made, and I think we're going to see it in a flashback at some point, that made Anakin Vader decide not to kill her and to help her,
Mhm.
and that's why she's so personally devoted to Anakin. But it might also be that like maybe when Obi-Wan came back, she was hiding, but he didn't help her in some way, or like who knows? But,
Right. There's some backstory that's been hinted at. It's pretty clear she was a Jedi in the temple,
Yeah.
or Pat, or
And we all
youngling.
pretty feel like she's probably going to have a hero turn,
It seems
Right,
possible
okay.
for sure.
or like a
know.
gray line, because I feel like we need to start getting some more of the gray Jedis, Siths. What do you
Yeah.
call them? The in-betweens.
I mean, there's
Yeah,
gray
gray-
Jedi,
gray
there's
Jedi
just
is a term that's
non-Jedi or
not-
Sith Force users, right? Like,
Yeah, they're like,
You
oh, you a little this, little that.
you have something going on with your headphones?
Sorry, we're getting some kind of weird buzzing noise, but it's actually not from the headphones. It's just happening outside.
I was like, I don't hear anything.
Maybe an air raid warning.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of hope we don't have her have a heel turn, like a hero turn. I like her just being evil because I
Me
think she
too.
is a very compelling villain right now. One further thing just on the content of the kind of the way people are attacking her that Riki said that I really want to echo, and I'll say I also made a TikTok about this earlier today. Riki says, also, responding to tweets concerning racism is not the place to bring up your opinions about someone else's acting/character. And I
Condemning racism.
condemn it. Yeah, thank you. Because that's something I see all the time. Like a couple months ago, I was putting up a bunch of tweets about like, look, if you don't like Rey, how about we just stop talking about it? Or can we at least acknowledge that, like, let's stop being sexist about it? And got a lot of people being like, well, okay, but actually here's why Rey's terrible. And I was like, A, that's not the point. And B, like when you're pushing that into the conversation, it kind of like, this is why you're so defensive about this. And I'm definitely seeing that about Reva Moses Ingram quite a lot as well, of, you know, hey, whatever you think of the character, how about we just stop like making racist personal attacks against her? And then people responding, well, but no, her character sucks. And it's like,
Right.
why do you think that's relevant to a discussion about not being terrible to the
Over
actress?
Rey, they did this exact same thing to that chick who played Rose.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's
Kelly
not,
Tran.
you know, yeah,
Mhm.
worse than Rey. Like everybody, you know, the Rey that
Yeah.
was real bad. That was like this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really good point. I do think it's a little bit hard, and it's something that a person needs to deliberate. Like when someone's like, you know, even if you think such and such, you know, can we not do such and such? It's like my natural reaction is like, yeah, I do think such and such, but totally not the other thing, you know, and blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And like, I think it's a really good point to be like, yeah, maybe just don't say the first thing. Maybe say that
Right.
separately. You know, if you want to
Yeah.
say a thing, be like, look, I'm just going to talk about this, you know, in my own tweet, not responding to a tweet. Like Ewan McGregor, I thought made a really nice, like a little video that was
Yeah,
basically
I
like,
I
hey,
shared that too.
Yeah.
I liked it.
and like I mean, I think responding to that with like, oh, I totally agree, but I still really don't like her performance is like, you know,
Yeah.
just don't do that, you know.
You just don't need the button. Just
And the thing is, a lot of people don't put in the I totally agree. They just go right to the
Sure, right, yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
and I will say also, I loved what Ewan McGregor said. I love that Star Wars put out their tweet, and I think actually that's why I was really glad that you brought up Kelly Marie Tran, because like, and I don't think this Riki actually put up a tweet about this earlier. I don't think let me start that again. Star Wars, I think, utterly failed to defend either Kelly Marie Tran or John Boyega, and actually kind of nerfed both of their characters.
Mhm.
I think it's hard to argue it wasn't in part impacted by all the critique they got.
Right.
And I still, like, to me, this doesn't forgive that, but I also think that when that happened, that doesn't invalidate this. Like, to me, this is, I wish Star Wars had had this kind of reaction and Disney had this kind of reaction back then.
mhm.
But I am still glad that they're much more intentionally stepping up and being like, hey, we're standing behind Moses. This is terrible. Stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
I mean, you can fail one time and then you do something better the next time. I mean, unless Vader's your boss and then you're just dead.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I will also say I part of why I was struggling this episode was I think when we recorded on the last one, we hadn't really been made aware yet of just how viral and terrible the attacks against Moses were being and the character. I think we knew there was some of that happening, but that was all in my head as I was watching, and so I actually kind of what you're talking about, Paul. I caught myself a couple times. There were a couple scenes that felt off to me, and I was like, no, I have to defend. No, wait a minute. As I saw it, I thought the dialogue was pretty wooden, and maybe that was the acting. Maybe it was the acting. Maybe it was the direction. Maybe it was the writing. I don't know. Some of those scenes with the Inquisitors definitely felt forced, in a way that like there is so much subtlety to what should be happening there, and the way they're all the politics among all of them, and and the whole thing of like one of them contacting Vader instead of her. It's kind of wonderful, I think, because like on the one hand, it's very Sith, it's very dark side, but also I've had that moment where like I was pissed when one of my coworkers told my boss the good news instead of me. Like I get that sucks, and I wanted to love that scene, but it just it fell a little flat to me.
Yeah, and I mean I think it very well may be the writing as much as anything else. I mean again, these are actors that I've seen in other things and enjoyed them in. And to be clear, like I'm not like these are terrible performances. Like that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like it just feels a little forced, and I like there's a lot of writers on these projects, on this one project, which is basically a 6-part movie in a lot of ways. So I think having that many writers sometimes, I mean, if you look back at like the production timeline and like how they came up with a story and then someone else took it over and then someone else, sometimes that, you get this kind of Hollywoodization of like, oh, well, we have to fix this, we have to fix that, instead of having as much of an organic story. And then there's another thing though that I think like, Darth Vader is such a great villain. And one of the things that makes Darth Vader work is the helmet, is the mask. And when you then have all these Inquisitors kind of modeling Vader a little bit, right? I mean, I feel like they're all kind of like modeling themselves after Vader in a way, but all their faces are showing. I think that's harder, right? Like seeing the human there, even if the character's, not human, but you see the makeup. For me, that's just a little harder. And that's, again, the sort of thing that I feel like in animation is easier for me. Obviously, for some people, it doesn't work very well. But for me, it's like, it's kind of like the thing like when you have kid actors, right? Like there's certain things that I think are harder to do in live action, are harder to do without, like would Mandalorian be the Mandalorian without the helmet on most of the time? Like, no, right? I mean, it's like if you always were seeing Pedro Pascal's
No, Pedro Pascal's pretty damn charming.
Right, but he shouldn't be charming most of the time, right? That's the thing. It's like you shouldn't get to see his face. It's like if Carl Urban had taken off the helmet in Dredd like Sylvester Stallone did, like you don't have the same effect, And so I think it's just, to me, it seems like something that's very challenging that they're doing a lot of good things with. And there's aspects in the performance I do enjoy a lot, but also just doesn't quite. It just feels a little forced to me. And honestly, like if I went back and rewatched the original trilogy, or not rewatched, if I watched the original trilogy for the first time, like this year, I would probably have some things to say that I'm like, no, that's just the performance. That's what I see. I see something with different eyes than somebody who's seen it for the first time.
For sure. Yeah, and I will, by the way, use that though as a reason to talk about what I think was my single favorite thing about this episode, because there was a lot of things I liked, but the thing, and it's funny because when I first heard that Hayden and Vader were going to be coming back to this, I had two big fears, and I feel like the show, on the one hand, like it did the thing I didn't want them to do in terms of the playing with canon, and we talked about that, but it also did not do the other thing I was afraid of, which is. And I am curious where you're going to go, because we had such a big deal made out of Hayden Christensen coming back. And part of me, I remember, was thinking, like, even putting aside my own thoughts about him as an actor, wait a minute, this is Vader. We're not supposed to be getting a Hayden Christensen voice. We're supposed to be getting a James Earl Jones voice. And so the first time Vader spoke, and I was like, is that? And I'm not always very good at identifying voices, and so I don't want to get too hopeful. And I was like, could Hayden Christensen be doing the best James Earl Jones impersonation anyone's ever done? I don't think so.
Reverb.
And then, yeah, about, good 5 minutes in, I was like, that's gotta be, right? And I didn't look it up because I didn't want to be spoiled. And then we got to the credits and it said James Earl Jones. And I was like, okay. And I think that's great. I think if you had Hayden Christensen's voice now, it would completely break canon and feel wrong and just not have the same effect. Because I think part of what makes him such a good villain is that incredibly deep, resonant voice. But it kind of makes me wonder, what is Hayden Christensen like?
He's making the best paycheck he's ever made in his entire life. He doesn't have to do anything but stomp the heck around and look awesome.
Yeah. And he is. I think the way he's physically moving feels it. There was something about Vader in Rogue One. Like the battle scene at the end was awesome, but some of it didn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
He's scary as hell the way he moves. And I think if that's Hayden Christensen as the body actor, fantastic. And maybe we're going to see him in some like flashbacks or some like he's going to talk to Obi-Wan with the helmet off. I don't know. But the choice to bring in James Earl Jones, I kind of feel bad to Hayden if Hayden's actually not a big part and they just kind of wanted to do that so that James Earl Jones was a surprise. I don't know, but whatever it is, I'm loving it.
Yeah, I agree. That's as much Hayden Christensen as I need to see.
It to me it feels like not even a choice. Like how could you not do it this way? Right. Like, I mean, from one syllable, I was like, oh, that's James Earl Jones. Like, it was just like, that's definitely him, and yeah, I mean, nobody else can do Vader really convincingly to me, and so, to do anything else would be unthinkable. And
in terms of like I agree with you. I don't imagine how you'd want anything else. James Earl Jones is 91.
Right.
I know.
Yeah.
He's not an automatic get, I don't think, by any means. So.
Choosing to use him should he choose to do it. The choice is whether he wants to do it, not whether you ask him, right?
You should have no power in this decision.
Excited.
Exactly.
He was probably like, yep.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, I bet with like audio engineering these days, though, you could probably, basically, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't actually need the huge... I mean, how did they do Tarkin in Rogue One?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of... I think it was someone else, but a lot of it was like a computer-generated, feed all his voice into something. Courtney points out in chat, imagine meeting Luke for the first time today. He's such a whiny little bee. Which... I
would be fine. I don't know. I love Luke. But, I hear you, but I was going to, Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. It's like, okay.
Although, we didn't talk about it last time, I did love that Obi-Wan is the one who finds and leaves this toy. Because I remember, one of the weird things about that movie is he's supposed to be, 19, he wants to go to college, and there he is, playing with a model starship. But, seeing that Obi-Wan gives it to him when he's 10, and... So far, he hasn't gotten it yet, so we'll see what happens.
He wants to go to the academy, right? The Imperial Flight Academy, right?
Yeah, which I think is like college. It's like the Air Force Academy.
Right. But it's
Academy.
It's learning to fly a thing that he's playing with. So I don't know. Yeah. I watch adults make Lego on Twitch, so it doesn't seem that weird to me that he's playing with the model. I don't know.
Look, I don't get things. If people enjoy that, that's fine. I kind of think childhood things you leave in childhood, adult things you do as an adult. So I'm just gonna make podcasts about Star Wars and fly around the world playing Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Something I loved is that Disney finally went for it and showed someone getting cut in half.
Yep.
Oh right, they really actually got bisected by the.
Because they always just don't, or it's just the helmet.
Right.
I was like, whoa, they did it.
I mean,
do you not remember Mandalorian season 1, episode 1 with the door?
Yeah, but then it was just his helmet that clanked down. Right?
I thought you saw half his body fall off.
I don't know if it was his slow motion falling backwards. I don't know. I was like, bravo, Disney.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought that was just a force field. I guess you don't want to touch that thing.
It was red. You know better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I will say also, going back to that early stuff, in some ways, I would love to have a whole show about young Princess Leia. I love her as a character. I like the actress. To me, I think the worst thing that's happened with her so far is that she was running down a hill and 2 grown men couldn't catch her.
Oh, that was terrible.
That chase scene was awful, but it has nothing to do with that young actress.
I don't totally agree with that, but okay.
Okay.
I mean, she's running in woods that she knows. and she's
That's fair.
smaller,
But
which
they
can
only
be an
run.
asset
They
if
got
there's a lot of
little
overgrowth.
legs. If I couldn't catch a kid, I don't know. I'd be like, here's my gun. Just like,
I mean,
what am I doing
I don't know.
here?
Go try and catch a kid. Actually, don't. People
I
would get
could catch a
upset.
kid. I could do it probably.
I think I don't know.
Not
I don't
you
think it's
two.
as easy.
I always catch Katie's kid,
Yeah,
but
that's
she's a little yeah. Come over here, you little shit.
Yeah. Like a lot of this, I think we could headcanon a reason why she gets away. I just thought the way it was shot didn't make sense. But my point being, like, actually, I'll get more to why I kind of wish we weren't getting as much of her going forward. But I did think the scene with Obi-Wan saying to her, "Now be quiet. You're the one who doesn't talk. Here's our cover story," and she just immediately is like, "Nah." Like to me, that was like into the garbage chute flyboy 100%. Like that felt such perfect writing of that's the girl who grows up into the garbage chute girl.
For sure. The garbage chute girl. Yeah, that's
I said that and I was like, I think I probably should have said woman. I also don't think that was the worst part of what I just said, but there we go.
It's fine.
Courtney also says, don't get me wrong, I feel that desperate need for power converters in my soul. I'm so nostalgic for it. Reminds me of my dad. Yeah, I can see that. I didn't grow up with like the mechanic dad. I grew up in an apartment. But yeah, I was never a car person at all. But yeah, you want to work on the car. You want to do the cool electronic stuff. I can get that. Just it's the high, like Mark Hamill was definitely a tenor back then. Like that voice went high.
But like the point is like, the development, I think, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they were, he's using this formula that now everything uses all the time, but like, at the time, I think it was a pretty coherent story to tell. Although the first Star Wars movie is actually my least favorite of the original trilogy. But.
That's fair. I don't think it's the best. It's my favorite because just to
sure.
watch.
Yeah.
It's nostalgia
That's
value.
Cool.
So for me, the other thing about here's the thing about the Leia thing, and it's again like I'm trying hard not to let this be the show that I want it to be, because I do think that's a problem. When you go in, you're like, I don't want it to be the Mephisto of it all by any means. But I do think that there's kind of a sense of like wasted opportunity. And for me, I think, and Paul, you kind of pointed this out as well. I get that I think, and certainly a lot of people have been talking about this, that the reason why they wanted to have a Kenobi Anakin fight so early was because this is the third part and that they had their thing in episode 3
right.
And he literally burns him. It's tit for tat revenge thing. To me, though, the moment of I thought the best moment of both the first 2 episodes was Obi-Wan realizing that Anakin Darth Vader is still alive, and I wanted time to sit with that. I wanted time to see him wrestling with that, maybe him not believing it, and so having him just meet him so fast and spending all his time taking care of Leia until then, it just felt like wasted opportunity. Did you guys feel the same way, or how did you feel about jumping into a Vader confrontation so quickly?
I think I already answered that question. I love it. Listen, my favorite part of the whole episode is when Obi-Wan Kenobi lights up that blue saber for the first time. Daddy, yes, right in the camera. I was just like, oh yeah, here we go. And then he turned it off and ran away again. I was like, stop doing it. Go fight him. And then they gave it to me, and I was very happy.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I loved it.
It does feel to me like pacing designed for people who want to see action, as opposed to pacing designed for someone who wants to see the slowly building tension. And I could certainly see how you could do they could have all just gone down the tunnel and gotten away after feeling that, right? After that feeling. I do think when Vader just started killing random people, like maybe Kenobi feels like he has to do something, right? Although, I
kind of like that. He's like, oh, sorry, everybody, I'm out.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Good luck, guys. In this town, that town, that's not, I gotta do me right now. And I really respect that.
I mean,
Rey, Jedi.
Like, it's so I could see that being, and then you drop Leia off, and then he's back on Tatooine, and then I feel like you can't have Vader come to Tatooine, but I feel like they're definitely going to do that, which, I mean, I don't know how that's going to work, and then not step on A New Hope, but okay. But it was really well done, I thought. Like, cinematically, right? The cinematography, like it was shot like a horror film, first of all, to begin with, right? And I thought it was very effective. It reminds me a little bit of how they did the Ahsoka scene in Mandalorian, but kind of on the opposite side, where it's the villains and not the hero, right? So I thought that it was beautiful visually, and I enjoyed their interaction to some extent, but it did feel a little bit like, maybe they blew their load a little early, and maybe they could have kind of built up tension more. But maybe you want to go 2 times, 3 times. I don't know.
Well, I really loved the fact that Vader couldn't drag his face back through the thing. He could have destroyed that damn robot and then just drug him back. There was no getting away with Vader being there. But I mean, how it's so Vader of him to be struck with so much emotion. That's his biggest problem.
So I took it as, and for just to agree on the cinematography point, 100%. There's a couple of moments where they do the thing where it's mostly darkness, and Kenobi just he's lit by this like bluish glow of his lightsaber, and it was it reminded me of one of the few moments of Attack of the Clones that I think is fantastic, when Dooku, Anakin, and Obi-Wan are fighting in this dark cave, and they're all just lit by the lightsabers. So that moment was great. I thought it was I thought Vader would have been able to kill Obi-Wan in that moment and chose not to, specifically because he wants to torture him. He wants to make Obi-Wan suffer. So yeah, I hear you saying. I don't think for me it was that Anakin had too much emotion. I think Anakin was like, I'm not done playing with my toy.
I mean, that you could say that is too much emotion. It's a different emotion.
Well, that's also true.
Too much thirst for the vengeance, and
That's what I'm at. You can't figure it out when they got masks on.
Right. Yeah, and that's
he like?
No.
Or,
right.
See you later.
Or is it like, I'm constantly in pain?
Yeah. Oh.
It reminds me of the end of Empire Strikes Back, when the Millennium Falcon gets away and Vader's standing there on the bridge just looking out at the stars, and then turns around and walks back, and everyone's like, please don't force choke me, where it feels like there's so much emotion, you kind of don't know what the emotion is. It's kind of up to you. You can kind of project it, but there's so much tension, and here it felt like there was a little less tension, maybe because everything was on fire, but there was definitely still some emotion,
Right. I think also in terms of tension, I like that we had the Jedi in the first 2 episodes. And I really like the character of that Khalil Nanjiani is playing. And I feel like when the scene is a fight where the only real named characters we've really come to care about are all people who we know live through this experience, that's for me, I think, was taking out a lot of the tension of it. It's that and that's a problem with all prequels, but there was never a moment where I actually believed that Anakin might kill him, or that Leia might get killed, or that, any of these things, because we've seen all of them.
Yeah, that's something that I just don't care, but I understand that that level of stakes is I understand intellectually that's important to people, Right. Personally, I find sometimes I can just enjoy things more easily then, because I don't necessarily want that as the actual stakes in this story,
Right.
It's because I'm oh, you killed off that character, I'm gonna quit your show. That was the person I was watching this show for. If they're the title character, even if it's not a prequel, you can be pretty sure they're not getting killed in the 3rd episode of 6.
Right.
They might die in the last one. Maybe they could get killed in the 3rd episode of 6, and then the next 3 episodes are just flashbacks. But that'll be a bold choice. I mean, but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Well, and I would just say, for me, it's not that I want there to be stakes. Like I said, I think I'd be happiest with a story entirely on Tatooine, where it's Obi-Wan deciding how much the stake is how much is he going to reveal himself, and he's never in real danger.
Right.
It's that I felt like the episode wanted me to believe there were stakes. It was
Right.
trying to build the tension of what's Vader gonna do to him, and I know the answer to that. What's gonna happen when Tala leaves Princess Leia alone? I know that she's okay.
There's this small group of children being farmed up right now that don't know it, though. Could you imagine getting to start now?
Can we not use the term "farmed up" for being raised?
Well,
Yes, I know what you mean.
Star Wars farming them up. You start them young.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Jedi. Who were getting
Yeah, that's what I thought
installed.
too. And
Yeah.
I realized she meant real children, and I was like,
I like it. I will say one thing I want to add to the whole, this is kind of going back to, performances and whatever, but I'm actually really interested in seeing the interaction between Leia and Reva. I think there's definitely some interesting things they can do there. And, I'll be curious if just like that dynamic plays more in a way that I enjoy.
Turn. That if anything's going to cause the hero or the
maybe
anti-hero turn,
maybe
it would be saving a little girl.
And
that's why I would be a better Grand Inquisitor.
Right. You'd be like, I don't care.
Let's just go. Yeah.
And I mean, I think she's about the same age that she was, right? When
it looks
maybe
like
more or less. So I think that's going to be a very interesting, like the way they got there, totally nonsensical to me. But I think, okay, you want to have that scene, like, I don't know, maybe you have do you have a whole episode where that's the dynamic? Like, does Leia know Vader? Because in A New Hope,
she says,
does, right?
like, I thought she says to
Tarkin,
I think
she says your
Tarkin,
stench, right?
I recognized your stench.
Yeah.
Or no, she says to Tarkin,
says
I recognize you holding Vader's leash.
Right. But to Vader, she says something like, only you could be so bold or something. Is that right?
I mean, I definitely get the idea. Like, to me, it's the impression of, like, Vader's often with the Emperor when he comes to the Senate. Like, Vader's kind of a known political force. So, yeah, I think they definitely know each other. That to me is not breaking canon.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting. And then her, but I would like to see her and Reva first, and then her and Vader. So I think there's definitely some interesting places that it can go with that. And then I guess this becomes a rescue mission for episodes 4 and 5 or something like that.
We already did that in episode 2.
But now we
go again.
Now we rescue mission from some actually intimidating people, not Flea.
Flea.
Flea. What did you think of Flea being in this?
I like that they just have these randos pop up.
Okay.
They're like Jason Sudeikis and what's his face being the stormtroopers in Mando. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
What's Flea doing right now?
Sure.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I don't feel
I couldn't tell who it was, so it didn't. He just seemed like a.
He looks like someone who couldn't catch 7 to.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I buy that he can't catch her.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great bass player, but not necessarily that athletic.
He doesn't look like much of a runner.
I thought he was Sting at first, which is funny because he's also a bass player who acts.
Though I will say that was another moment where I was surprised that they were jumping so far into the jugular instead of being a little more subtle. Because what I thought was going to happen was, pirates kidnap the daughter of rich people for ransom, because that's what people do a lot.
Sure.
And that it would be something like, this would have nothing to do with anything the Force, but, Bail Organa's freaking out. It's his daughter. He goes to Obi-Wan, and somehow one of the Inquisitors finds out about this. Give us much more of a subtle story of let things build for a couple of episodes.
I thought that was her plan from the beginning, though, right?
This was all the Inquisitor's plan.
Yeah.
Which I was just like, it just feels lazy to me. I think there's a way to make that story more interesting.
Yeah.
That was 6 episodes. There's not. Why can't they always do 10? Just 10.
For the record, apparently Filoni's the one who's like, hey, why don't you have Inquisitors in this? Why don't you go bigger than just being on Tatooine? So I know it's often a continual Filoni love fest, but that's an example of maybe made a suggestion that you're not that fond of. The word lazy with writing, it kind of irks me a little bit. partially as a writer who doesn't write nearly as much as I would like to because it's so hard. But like, it for me, it's like there's things that are contrived, and I guess there's things that it feels like very kind of uncreative and tropey. I guess I think kind of when you say lazy, you mean kind of like
it's the low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
it's the like. I think if you've asked 100 people, like, come up with a story about these characters, this is the one the majority would come up for because it's the first one you think about. And that doesn't always mean it's a bad thing, but like, I think you could have gone deeper. I think you could have found some more interesting twists to it. Because like you said, we now have another Leia rescue plot, which to me, and maybe we won't get it. Maybe she'll free herself. Maybe something else will happen. But when I watch the end of that episode, I'm like, oh, I'm interested to know what will happen when Reva and Leia spend time together. I'm not interested in watching her get rescued again. I saw that already.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. It's like those 4 episodes of the Clone Wars that in an otherwise excellent season 7 where like they escape like 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, this is the same episode as the last episode. Ricky says, why does fifth brother claim he is next in line? What do their numbers even mean? I think maybe there's more brothers than sisters, right? And so like fifth brother, I mean, because these are naming conventions in families sometimes, right? Where like the fifth brother might be older than the third sister. If there's like, 5 brothers and like 3 sisters, she could still be the youngest. I don't know. And maybe there's other things.
I think it's pretty clear seniority is not what counts in the dark side. It's not who's next in line. It's who's proven themselves most,
But he says he's next in line, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Well, right. But I'm saying that
that's not necessarily how it's actually going to work? Yeah,
well, no, it's not. I don't think he means I'm next in line because I'm the highest number or something. I think he means because, remember 6 months ago, Vader thought I did a great job catching those kids in Kashyyyk or whatever it is. And so Vader said, you're the next in line then.
I see.
That's the impression I got.
Gryffindor has the most points, and so they get to... Yeah. Or are they all Slytherin? I don't know.
Slytherin for life.
Yeah, I'm pro Slytherin. Without the transphobic writer nonsense that I just obligatorily am always going to say. We bring that up because especially it's Pride Month. But yeah, I'm pro Slytherin. What is some comments there?
One other thing I'll say about Reva is that like I think she looks awesome.
Yeah, I'm like I'm just
like
happy
super
to see
badass and terrifying.
Female on a live action thing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm totally here for that. 100%.
Yeah, I don't care. Like whatever she's been, I'm like, yep, be evil, be a mean. I'm not gonna curse.
Yeah.
What she's doing, what she's putting down, I'm picking up and I'm loving it.
Yeah,
I'm like, don't kill that little kid. I know you're not going to, but like if it gets bad, like that would make it like the Sith, like I don't know. That's why I feel like she's gonna have the hero chase. So I have a question.
Yeah.
Is she a Sith?
No.
So here's my understanding of it. The Sith themselves are only the people who are granted the title of Darth. They are actual Sith masters, and it used to be that there were thousands of them. But they were always fighting with each other because the dark side is all about ambition and power sets you free and breaks your chains and all this. And so one thing that the Clone Wars and the Rebels established, but also the books help do this, is that there are other dark side force users who the Sith will sort of control and use as pawns, and they will have a lot of infighting and the like, but they're not actual Sith. So for example, Dooku doesn't become Darth Tyrannus until they think Maul is dead. And then when Maul comes back, Sidious is like, I don't want another. I have Dooku and I'm going to have Anakin soon.
Yeah.
I don't need you. And I don't. So yeah, I think the idea is
they're all Maul.
Yeah, exactly. He's Maul. And he
Spider
wants
Maul,
to be
right?
Spider Maul does whatever a Spider Maul does.
Yeah, so I think the idea is that they are dark side force users. They're working for Sith lords, and they may want you brought this up last time, Paul. Like, I kind of think that every couple of years, Darth Vader's like, "Hey, how about you and I go conquer the Empire together?
And together we will."
Yes, I love that. He would get me in a second. I'd be like, me?
And I think that's part of what I like so much about Reva's character is that, in the original movies, what we saw is that Vader is very obsequious towards the Emperor. Like, he
Right.
kind of wants to kill him sometimes, but still he's like, yes, my master, whatever, my master. Like,
Yeah.
we have to find the Millennium Falcon, take us out, but then no, stop it immediately because I have to talk to the Emperor. And so seeing Reva, like, she kind of is like that to Anakin, but to everyone else, she's like, you think you can boss me around? I'm going to stab you in the back.
Yeah.
And I just love that because to me that feels so.
I love it.
It's that I have one person I'll give my allegiance to,
Right.
and everyone else can kick rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
She wants to become Vader's apprentice and then overthrow the Emperor with him. That's clearly like her plan, right?
100%.
And I kind of like, honestly, that's one of the downsides of being a prequel is like, I don't know, I'd watch that.
Yeah.
I'm here for that. I enjoyed her interaction with Vader a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. So I think that's about all the things I wanted to touch on. Any other last points from either of you?
No, I'm good. I didn't write any notes. I have no bullet points. So
Yeah. I'll just say it was kind of nice to stay up till, because for a while I've been staying up till 2 a.m. for, I think there was something else before Moon Knight, and then it was Moon Knight, and then, it's been nice to get.
I have
Hawkeye?
one note.
Oh, Hawkeye, yeah.
My
ahead.
one note says, with the benefit of hindsight, he probably should have just killed him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he should have. Or rescued him and been like, look, you're not going to be doing any damage right now. I'm going to take you with me.
Gonna let his
put you in
arms
a
and his face
force
and his
coma or
legs
something.
burn off. Do the nice, put him out of his misery. Kill
Little
him.
coup de grace.
Yeah, I can't kill you, but I'm going to let you slowly burn to death, but I'm not going to watch, so.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm going to yell at you about how you did terrible things.
I'm cool with that. I'm rubbing it in his face, man. Like, look at what you did. I didn't do this. You did this. I gave you every opportunity, and I took the high ground, and I warned you. But end it. Look at what you did.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan.
I feel like that's like one of the better scenes in Revenge of the Sith, / one of the only good ones. But it also doesn't make any sense at the end. It's like, really, you just left him there.
You just left him.
Really?
After this whole long, I can't kill him. I can't do it.
It's just.
But.
Yeah.
But.
I'll dismember him and then leave him burning, and maybe he'll be okay.
I will say that is one thing that I thought the episode did well. And part of why I keep saying I want more of Obi-Wan Kenobi's interiority is because Ewan McGregor is such an amazing character. Like, I think having a couple of long shots of just his face as he's processing things would be amazing.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Courtney pointed out, that there was a moment where we see not just Vader killing these people, but Obi-Wan's guilt. That he knows he's the cause of this, not only right now, but because he didn't just cut off the head. Watch a zombie movie. You know what you're supposed to do. And I think that was one thing that did really come across really strongly here.
Actually, cutting off a head of a zombie would not kill them. You have to destroy the brain. Just not nitpicking. Just
that's fair. That's fair. That's a nit that should be picked. So, there we go. I'm thinking of vampires.
Depends on the flavor of zombie, but yeah, some vampires also you can decapitate and they'll be okay. But usually it's effective.
Yeah.
We do have one more big piece we're going to talk about, which is giving Ashley a chance to kind of comment on what we talked about just a couple days ago on the Superhero Ethics podcast. But first, Paul, we're putting this out on video, and there's chances for people to watch stuff on video. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're streaming here on Twitch right now, which if you're here on Twitch, you know that. If you're on YouTube or listening to the podcast, maybe you know that, but it's a thing. So you can always join us when we're live. I'll try to have the schedule on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/ZenMadman. And, there will be other notifications, various places. You can follow here. And also on YouTube, you can watch the slightly edited videos later, sometimes with some of the pre and post shenanigans left in on YouTube as ZenMadman. I guess it's youtube.com/user/ZenMadman. We'll work on that once we get to 100 subscribers. We get a vanity URL.
I found if I just Google YouTube and ZenMadman, just those two words, it always takes me there. So
there is also ZenMadman Poker. So that's where I just do my poker stuff. So, if you're interested in poker, hit me up there too. But just to not be too confused.
And actually, you might be on a podcast or two from time to time. What else are you up to these days?
Oh, what do we have going on? I guess The Boys comes out this Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that is happening. And then we're covering Stranger Things at some point next week, which will be fun. And we got Top Gun and Marvel stuff as usual on the MCU cast.
Yep. MCU cast to check out Ashley. Lots of other great content there. Of course, this podcast and all the other podcasts I do is on the Ethical Panda. We had great comments from the Twitch, but I also love emails and messages like that. We've already gotten a couple of good emails that myself and Riki and Sarah and possibly Matthew Carroll will be talking about on Monday. So go to theethicalpanda.com. There you'll find all the ways to give us feedback. So we're going to switch gears and talk to Ashley about celebrity status and fandom and the recent trial. And this is a topic that no one has any strong feelings about. So, I checked the internet. Everyone's happy. So
everyone's happy. That's the default state of the internet.
Yeah.
It's got to set the stage.
We all agree. No,
Paul, why do you care about the Amber? Actually, well.
You want me to give my quote?
Yeah.
Okay, my quote when you asked.
Well, the question was, how much do you care about the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial?
Oh wait, is this gonna then also need the explicit tag? Because I said.
Let's cut all this out. All right, I'll just start that again. All right, so welcome back. We're going to talk about the celebrity concept that Paul and I were talking about, celebrity and fandom. And actually, a lot of this, what we talked about was the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. As we're recording that, the trial has now come to an end. They basically were both found guilty of defamation. Johnny Depp got a much bigger payout than Amber Heard. But one thing Paul and I talked about, at least from my perspective, and I don't want to speak for Paul, but I can't akin to a place of I care about the trial in terms of the way it is tapping into larger conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And also just in terms of my decision making about am I going to go see Aquaman 2 or not? The answer is no. But beyond that, I'm not really that into the details of it.
Right.
You, I know, have been really into the details about it. I want to kind of give a chance for that perspective. What was it for you that kind of got you so sucked into this trial?
So I watched so much true crime. Like second to Marvel and horror, like third is true crime, which also kind of goes hand in hand with some horror. Right. But I watch like the law and court TV. Virginia specifically, all cases that are in Virginia, usually around DC, can be televised. So they usually are. And I don't think a lot of people know that. So there's tons of trials that are always out there. Like I found it during the Michelle Carter trial, because I was very into that story. The girl who texted with her boyfriend and he committed suicide, and she was at fault when they read all the text messages, if you remember that case.
Oh yeah, she was kind of encouraging him.
And it was almost, it wasn't too unsimilar using the First Amendment wise than what's happening here, and the whole like freedom of speech kind of thing was brought up a lot. So like I just learn a lot of different things, and to watch the actual trials is crazy, because I think watching the way that the lawyers can get in people's head is interesting. Like, the objections sustained, like how they get by with, like, I just think the whole process is interesting. And this was almost like a masterclass, because his lawyers were very good. Her lawyers are not so great. And you could tell by how many objections and sustains were overruled by the judge. So just watching that alone was very interesting. Plus, this is a high profile, celebrity case, not unlike the OJ trial or whatever other trials have come, the staircase trial, which I followed very closely and watched. It's just all interesting.
I see you made a face about the staircase trial, Matthew. Okay, first of all, I think that's a really interesting perspective. Like, my response to the question was like, I can't figure out why the F I would be interested in any of these things, right? I think that's a really interesting angle on, like, you're actually interested in the law. Like, if you're interested in other cases besides just like celebrity gossip cases, kind of. Like, not to be like,
oh no, I watch a lot.
Oh, you like this for good reasons. You like it for bad reasons. It's like, all right, people like what they like. But
if I have to kill somebody, I have a really good idea of how I'm going to act on the stand. Or if you get in trouble or in a situation when you're innocent, it's really learning a lot about your rights.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No. And I actually, in like 8th grade, it was the 13s. We didn't have grades at Pang Street, but we did a mock trial, and it was a staircase trial. And I think I was defense lawyer, and somebody claimed, and somebody claimed that they'd been pushed, this is someone Matthew, Andrew, claimed that they had been pushed down the stairs by my client. And it was the whole thing was around this staircase, and it was very fun. And I grilled him on his shoes. I was like, but those shoes are all duct taped up. Isn't it true that you don't have any traction on those shoes? But yeah.
It's fascinating. Like when you're if you're a character witness, you're not allowed to say what anybody told you. So if you start a thing like, just for example, like Johnny Depp said, they'd be like, objection, hearsay.
Right.
And even if they're like, but they said it to me,
right,
it doesn't matter. It's just little interesting things that can really trip you up when you're on the stand and make you not look legitimate or you know.
And in some ways it's interesting because my parents were both lawyers, and my mother was someone who had a great deal of respect for the American legal system, but also thought it was very problematic. And she, in a lot of ways, she really admired like the system that the French and some others use, where it's not as adversarial, where it's the judge and judge investigators who are trying to like find out the facts of the case. And I think there's definitely problems with a lot of different models. I'm not saying that that's good and this is bad, but certainly the way you're saying it, like, to me, the idea that like I don't think I think if I could study this whole thing for hours and hours on end, days and days on end, I still wouldn't feel qualified to decide like Amber was right, Johnny was right, you know, who was right or wrong here.
Well, you need to like break down what the actual trial was about, because they weren't both different. Like that was not exactly correct what you said at the beginning.
Well, no, but that's my point. Is I'm saying like you're right. The trial wasn't supposed to do that, but certainly public opinion is doing that. Like that's and kind of my point is, especially when you say that like maybe one of the biggest differences here, maybe why Johnny won is because of the like difference in quality of lawyers. Like I think to me that's kind of upsetting. Of like that you know like because again I don't know what the truth is here. I don't think I'm ever going to know the truth, but just knowing that like one of them may have had much more qualified or much more skilled lawyers, like
that's not exactly like you all learn the law and you learn it. It's just being able to use the law better than somebody else. Like I'm not trying to discredit their lawyers. It's just some people are two painters. You know, you got Monet and Andy Warhol. They're both really good, but who would be like a better painter? I don't know, because I'm not saying that they weren't. She had an equal chance to get lawyers who are as good, but for some, like they were poking holes in the story, and that also is a reason to think that maybe there's something wrong with the story. If it's this easy to dismantle and you're looking this bad, and all of your statements or objections are being sustained because you're not objecting correctly. I don't know. That's more of I wasn't saying like one wasn't qualified enough.
Oh no, I'm not just saying you, and I've heard that argument. But like one of the things I've been reading a lot is people saying like, is Amber really as terrible as people say, or is it that her lawyers aren't as good? And I'm just saying that to me that introduces an element of uncertainty that I kind of wish like wasn't a part of our legal system. But
there's something really interesting that you can think about that they talked about in closing arguments, and it was like Johnny Depp had how many character witnesses come in, and Amber Heard in the trial of her life only could get her sister. She didn't have one other person who was willing, who wasn't a paid expert to take the stand for her.
Right.
I think that both of them did horrible things to each other, but the court case was about if that op-ed that she posted, defamed him in any way.
Yeah.
And her countersue was that he did as well. So he won on all accounts for his side. And then when they countered, she lost most of them, but won the fact that his ex-lawyer, Mr. Waldman, had said and posted on Twitter, which he's now blocked from forever for posting these things, horrible things. But that's why Johnny Depp he's not going to have to pay her. Well, somebody else, they said Johnny Depp is paying $0.
So she countersued his lawyer, or his former lawyer, basically.
Adam Waldman's at home probably like, how did I get dragged into this? Like, because that did happen. Johnny Depp. But the thing was, they said that Depp probably knowingly knew that he was going to post those.
Right.
So that's kind of like, and that's why having to bring out all the monsters in the closet for both of them was to kind of be like, well, you have to look at the whole story to see if she posted this op-ed and this is lying, and that we think that this wasn't true after signing an NDA saying that you weren't allowed to talk about each other. Both of them did that. So, It was a very risk, like for him to bring all this up and bring it all out in the open is, you know, we'll see if they can bounce back from this.
But she's gonna be in Aquaman 2, right? Have they shot it, or are they? So they already shot it, right? And then...
I heard she like spoiled some of it on Stan.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. I could tell you, but
I do wonder, because I think DC, I know in earlier statements, when years ago people were first trying to bring up some of this, maybe Amber was actually the terrible one, or maybe they're both terrible. And I don't remember the details. It was years ago, and this is a story I've not been paying much attention to. But I remember DC said something along the lines of, look, until there's actual like a legal conviction of some kind, we're not gonna like kick Amber out of our movies. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe like, and I think public opinion has been shifting back and forth on this. A couple weeks ago, it seemed very against Ms. Heard. Today, it does seem like there's a lot of people kind of recognizing, and again, it is kind of like we were saying before about Reva. I think it's a very similar story. As far as I can tell, like, the discussion about what Amber Heard did or didn't do has now morphed into a very misogynistic, like, look, women always lie, Me Too is always wrong. Like, you know,
I think that's so dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and so, yeah, like, I don't.
Every single person is a person. Women do not float on this pedestal where we never lie and you got to believe all of us. And I say that from experience. Trust me, I know. Personally, physically myself, and have seen it with people in my life. And we, you know, women, men, we lie and we're terrible. And they, you know, sometimes, you know, there's going to be bad. I don't even want to say bad. I don't know. I'm like dancing around the fuck out of this. I'm terrified to say it right. But no, we're not, you know.
But like, having said that, it's like, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't believe anyone ever, right? It's like, you don't need to take the full Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, you know, it's a hard situation.
The circle is now complete. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Just to think that, you know, no one would, like, look at it with the Z's. Aziz pretty much almost got canceled, and it turned out it was like, oh, I just kind of really didn't want to give him a blowjob. And it's like, well, that is not. You see what you did there, girl? Like, in the middle of this, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I hear that. I think this gets into a lot. Like, to me, I think because there's been such a long history of, and still is, a like, you don't believe the woman, you don't believe the victim unless she has like physical proof or whatever. That I still think the idea of like kind of starting from a place of we're probably going to believe someone, but be open to skepticism. Mm-hmm. Because yeah, more than anything, to me, and this is kind of what we talked about last time, this is a literal anecdote. This is one particular case, and people trying to use it to prove kind of one larger point. But yeah, I understand why you're scared, because I think this case is part of these much larger narratives that are hard to talk about. Mm-hmm. And frankly, there's a lot of people, I think, not acting in good faith, using this story to prove it. So it's kind of like, I agree with the first sentence of what that person is saying, but none of the rest of it. Right. And I don't want to be associated with them.
It's going to happen. There's no stopping it. There's no changing it. But it's also shedding a little bit on the light, you know, that, you know, you could, you know, men aren't always liars, and yes, men can be abused too. Yeah. My mom used to beat her boyfriends up, like, badly. Mm-hmm. I've seen it, you know, it's, you know, there's just like, you know, people are just people. We're people.
Yeah. And when we're talking about anything that happened outside of our own sphere of observation, like, there's always a level of uncertainty. Even the things that we observe, there's a level of uncertainty. Yeah. Like, is that really what I saw? It's like, sometimes it's not. Usually it is. But sometimes it's not, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, mirages are a thing. Someone didn't make that up. Like, there are mirages, right? And like, that's not to say like, oh, you can't trust anything you see. Like, no. Just like, there exists uncertainty, and people are really rough at accepting uncertainty.
There was a lot of recordings and a lot of videos of both of them being equally horrible.
Right.
Her talking about, I punched you in the face. Grow up, Johnny, you giant face. Like, outly, just flat out saying it, you know? What are you going to tell the world? Oh, I'm Johnny Depp and I'm a man and I'm a victim of abuse. Are you going to tell the whole world? I was like, ooh. Yeah, he is.
And I think it's interesting because this is actually kind of relating to a lot of the conversations we have over on the Superhero Ethics podcast about villains, you know, and about how it changes your perspective a lot if you know a villain's backstory, because then and I bring them up because there's been a lot of people arguing that the way Johnny was I think people have made this argument about both of them is the kind of question of like, well, whoever starts the cycle of violence, they're the bad one, and the other one's just responding to the cycle of violence, so it's not their fault. And there's a lot of truth to that. But there's also like this idea of like, okay, who started it is bad and the other person is good. It's a real mess.
And they were both very, very terrible. Like he smashed everything in that, like would smash everything around. Like, no, that's not hitting her, but you're smashing everything, and there's glass everywhere, and you're taking pills. And like, I hate to go back to my own experiences, but my mom would black out and from pills, and they don't remember. They really don't. They're like, you did that to yourself. You did all this. I didn't do it. And they really, it's like a pathological thing. They really believe it. It's sad, and it's a sad circle. So nobody was a good guy in this story.
Definitely.
But that wasn't what the case was about.
Courtney in the chat made two comments I just wanted to comment on. One was replace her with a dolphin, no one will know. I will say that, like, granted, I did not like the first Aquaman movie in general. There's nothing about her acting performance that was like, oh God, we can't have it without her. Yeah, replace her with a dolphin. Replace everyone with a dolphin.
Replace her with Johnny Depp.
I thought she was fine. Like, I'm not like a huge fan or anything, but replace her with Johnny Depp. Like, I don't know. I think the Aquaman movie is underrated because reasons, but
that's fair.
Which isn't to say that like I think it's great. It's just like I think it's fine. I think it's a fine movie. Like it's as good as like an average MCU movie, and like it actually did some things that like other movies weren't doing. You know, replace all actors with Jason Momoa's abs.
I would second that. Here.
I want his face and his beard, but Jason Momoa in general, I would be very okay with.
Replace the dolphins with his face and his beard.
There you go. The other thing Courtney brought up, though, I think was really important is coming from a mental health perspective. Wait, let me make sure I can read it. I have bad glasses. Coming from a mental health perspective, I can absolutely see how this came about. BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, is such a complex and often terrifying diagnosis to have. And I'm someone who has I have a diagnosis that's kind of like 80% of PTSD, 80% of borderline. But it is very true. And I've had therapists who didn't want to work with me about it. I had a year or two in my life where my father had read this book about like how terrible it is to parent people with borderline. And I worked through that a good deal. But like, it's very difficult. And I think if nothing else, what this trial taught me is how incredibly glad I am not a celebrity, because I have seen my parents go through very bad marital issues. I have certainly had relationship problems, and I spent a number of years as a relationship counselor. And I just think if there are ever two things that should never be close to each other, it's on the one hand, trying to unravel all the complexities and nuances of a toxic relationship, and the other is Twitter. Because those two things don't mix well at all. And yet this whole thing has been the Twitterification of this trial, I think, is where it's gotten really ridiculous.
I don't Twitter. I guess I missed that whole side of it.
Yeah, I know. I was appreciated. You have these much more complex takes where I do see so many people who are just like, oh no, this proves Amber's bad, or no, Amber's being so unfairly treated, or just, and it's just, it's so much more complex, and probably all of it's true, and none of it's true. And who the hell knows?
Yeah, I definitely think on Twitter, if there's an opinion that can be had, you can find someone who has it, no matter how, whatever it is.
Find your tribe.
It's,
I do like the idea that, hey, if this lawyer is getting banned from Twitter forever, well, maybe there's some hope about some political figures remaining
and that
banned
happened
forever.
back in 2016 when he posted it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well,
it's crazy. There's a lot. It's a lot of information.
Reminder, the block button is free.
Yes, it is.
It can be your friend, for sure.
Use it liberally.
Yeah, there's just a lot of times when it's like, why do I mean, I go through sort of social media, like, cleanses from time to time, and, like, I don't know, at some point I might just, like, delete them all. But I do think it's, like, sometimes you can just, like, just be like, I don't need this entering into here. Right. So like, no. And then that's that, and it's like, it's helpful, I think.
I blocked a couple of people this week. It's great.
Yeah. I've been on a rant. If you want to see my ranting about a lot of the Star Wars toxicity and stuff like that, go to TikTok, TheEthicalPanda. But one thing I've been talking about a lot there too, and some other creators even better than I, wow, that sounds arrogant for me. A lot of really great creators, especially there, that I have a lot of respect for, have also been making these points. Like, I don't think the overall Star Wars fandom is toxic any more than I think most of these fandoms are toxic. I think all the stuff coming out of Star Wars Celebration has reminded me like how many great, wonderful Star Wars fan creators there are. The thing is that these tiny minorities take up so much of the oxygen in the room, and they yell and scream so loudly that it turns other people off, makes them want to walk away. And I think if you don't want to be on social media, if you don't want to be in the conversations, that's fine. Protect yourself, protect your mental health. But if you can, help shut them down, gatekeep. I think we can gatekeep fandom and make clear, hate has no place in it. And yeah, I'm all for that. I've been having more and more when I do TikTok lives, some haters will come in, and when I just tried to ignore them, it wouldn't work. And when I would just, shut them down and get other people to help shut them down, they went away. So yeah.
I'm less optimistic that that's a thing. And I have some things, but that sounded really beautiful, so I'll just shut up.
Well, it's not even just you can make them go away. It's also just drowning them out. I think when those people are the only people talking about it because everyone else is like, I don't want to get involved, which again is fair. But anyway,
yeah,
we're now way off into our tangent land. So any last comments about Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Star Wars, Stranger Things, AEW wrestling from last night? I don't know, whatever anyone's got.
Because of Stranger Things, I've had Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill on repeat, and I recommend everybody else should too.
I was about 20 minutes into the first episode before I realized that I had 3 minutes, not an hour and 3 minutes before our recording. But I am looking forward to getting back to Stranger Things. And myself and Ashley and one of the people who's on Jaws with us on the Superhero Ethic podcast will be recording on Stranger Things soon. So
nice.
Look forward to that.
Hey.
I have
Paul,
never
closing.
I have never seen Stranger Things. It has been out for years now. I will still get mad at you if you spoil it for me because I feel like I probably want to watch it someday. So that's just how it is.
I laughed because you were on our invitation email, and I was very confused.
I know. I was like,
you
what?
saying that you didn't watch that show.
Right. I think I'm just default on the invites now.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
that's for sure. Yeah, I'll recommend you watch it, but there's a long list of those, and it will not be spoiled in any way, shape, or form. And if anyone who spoils Stranger Things on the comments for about this, I will find you and I will run you over with my wheelchair. And wheelchair marks are hard to get out of clothing, so just don't do it. All right, I'm having myself, Paul, Ashley. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for putting up with our nonsense because we've had a lot of nonsense this episode. But I hope that you are enjoying Obi-Wan Kenobi or have whatever feelings you're having. I think you're enjoying our coverage about it. Please help get the word out. Please let people know about these Twitch casts. Please share the YouTube videos, share the podcast. This is a time when a lot of people are suddenly going to be a lot more interested in content. The more people who are listening, the more hits we're getting, the more money we're making and the more access we're getting and the easier it is for us to keep making content for you. So if you enjoy this, please take a moment, leave a 5-star review, tell other people you like it, leave a comment, leave a like, all the things and all the social media. And most importantly, have a nice day.
You go.
I don't.
Bye.
I don't know, Utini or something.
Yep. Oh yes. Okay. We're not.
What?
Folks, you're starting to talk about something awesome for Stranger Things in the chat, and I really want to comment, but I'm not.
What
going
did we
to.
just say?
We just said I will ban you. I will ban you from the chat.
What did I just say?